Good morning, everyone. I wasn't going to show this video clip because I just can't stand hearing Trudeau's voice for extended periods of time, but this is crazy. The left is kind of eating themselves here. Can you imagine a long, drawn-out applause for the announcement of genocide? Can you imagine that? Well, imagine no more. Here we go.
Earlier this morning, the National Inquiry formally presented their final report, in which they found that the tragic violence that Indigenous women and girls have experienced amounts to genocide.
Hear the whooping and the hollering there? Woo! Weird, right? I thought that was the strangest thing. And here's another strange thing. This is the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls report, okay? Murdered, missing, Indigenous women and girls. Okay, so I'm going to cue up the next clip. Here's Trudeau again.
We will do a thorough review of this report and develop and implement a national action plan to address violence against Indigenous women, girls, and LGBTQ and Two-Spirit people.
Huh? What? Murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, right? So LGBTQ two-spirited people. What are the numbers? Like, did that make up a large percentage of the murdered and missing women and girls? Were a lot of them LGBT identifying, or what? Why include that? It seems like some people got into this report and made it more about virtue signaling than actual reconciliation or finding out what happened to these murdered women. These missing and murdered women. Like, I thought the report was to look into what happened, not declare it a genocide. It seems like, oh yeah, well, that happened and now we're going to pay for it. And it doesn't even address the actual potential genocides that Canada has engaged in over the last 100 years. In the 1900s, Canada selectively forced sterilization on First Nations women. And the residential schools program existed as well. So talking about those in this context, maybe we'd have a conversation. But within this context, it seems like a cop-out. It seems like the report didn't deliver at all. It just said, here's the explanation, and now we're going to give them an excuse to sue the Canadian government because it was their fault, because they committed genocide. Very strange. It's so weird. And the extended clapping and the inclusion of the LGBTQ community, again, it doesn't address the report on the missing and murdered girls. Another slap in the face. Here's another bit of brevity. It's a meme from Meta Canada, but here it goes. It says, First Nation people in Canada pay no taxes, receive free housing on reserve, receive free tuition and preferential hiring for government jobs. They also have statutory mandated lesser sentences when convicted of a crime. These are just a few examples of the racism and colonialism that Canada deliberately inflicts on the First Nations people, contributing to an ongoing genocide. My point in showing this is calling it this and not addressing the other obvious acts of genocide, and I'm going to show you that they are in just a minute, is kind of another cop-out. It's really, really strange. But maybe this is a poor chess move from Justin Trudeau, or maybe this came out of nowhere and he's just trying to deal with it like he deals with pretty much everything else. Everybody else experiences it differently than our dear leader. But here's the United Nations Human Rights, and this is the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. And yes, Canada has signed on to this. Here's the United Nations Treaty Collection, and this is the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. And where are we? Canada. Signed in 1949 and ratified in the House on 3rd of September 1952. So that's interesting to note. Here's the convention. And the contracting parties, having considered the declaration made by the General Assembly of the United Nations in its resolution 96-1, dated 11 December 1946, that genocide is a crime under international law contrary to the spirit and aims of the United Nations and condemned by the civilized world, recognizing that all periods of history genocide has inflicted great losses on humanity, and being convinced that in order to liberate mankind from such an odious scourge, international cooperation is required. Hereby agree as hereinafter provided. Article 1. The contracting parties confirm that genocide, whether committed in time of peace or in time of war, is a crime under international law, which they undertake to prevent and to punish. Article 2. In the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a nation, ethical, racial, or religious group as such. A. Killing members of the group. B. Causing serious bodily harm or mental harm to members of the group. Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Article 3. The following acts shall be punishable. A. Genocide. B. Conspiracy to commit genocide. C. Direct and public incitement to commit genocide. Attempt to commit genocide. E. Complicity in genocide. Article 4. Persons committing genocide or any of the other acts as enumerated in Article 3 shall be punished, whether they are constitutionally responsible rulers, public officials, or private individuals. Does that mean Justin Trudeau, as the Prime Minister of Canada, who oversaw this ongoing genocide, should be consequenced? Perhaps, if it is held up in international courts. But again, this whole thing just seems so weird. Back to this. Article 6. Persons charged with genocide or any other act as enumerated in Article 3 shall be tried by a competent tribunal of the state in a territory of which the act was committed, or by such international penal tribunal as may have jurisdiction with respect to those contracting parties which shall have accepted its jurisdiction. Article 8. Any contracting party may call upon the competent organs of the United Nations to take such action under the Charter of the United Nations as they consider appropriate for the prevention and suppression of acts of genocide or any of the other acts enumerated in Article 3. Article 9. Disputes between the contracting parties relating to the interpretation, application, or fulfillment of the present convention, including those related to the responsibility of the state for genocide or for any of the other acts enumerated in Article 3 shall be submitted to the International Court of Justice at the request of the parties to the dispute. So, interesting. We've signed on to that. And if you want to do residential school reading, here's Canadian Lawyer link. I'm not going to get into it, but I just want to note that. Also, if this is focusing just on the missing and murdered Aboriginal girls or women, how come, and this is from 2015, and I noted this before, how come the Canadian government is being blamed for something that, when we know who the killer is, 70% of the time, it's another person of the same race? Is that a genocide? Can you commit genocide of your own race? I suppose you can, but I don't think by murdering women, I don't think this fits. I don't think this fits. And I think there could be a case to make that would fit, but at the same time, there hasn't been up till now. And it's very interesting to note how this is all playing out, because it doesn't seem, like I said, that it's really focused on the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. The report seems corrupted. It seems like it's not talking about what it was initially intended to find out. And that's concerning. Here's Maxime Bernier tweeting, quote, Trudeau wants to spend $1.4 billion every year, up from $1.1 billion now, on women's health services in developing countries, with $700 million on abortion and reproductive health. $700 million, up from $400 million, everyone. Back to Bernier. This is insane. Does he believe he's already running a world government? And maybe. Here's the article. CBC's reporting, quote, Trudeau pledges more funding for reproductive health services worldwide. Canada will increase funding for women's health worldwide to $1.4 billion every year starting in 2023. All right. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made several not too subtle references to the American president Tuesday as he pledged to gradually increase international aid for women's health to $1.4 billion annually, with half dedicated to ensuring women have access to safe abortions and reproductive health services worldwide. I'm going to pause here. Abortion is a very, very fraught topic in Canadian politics. If you had a conversation, I don't think you could have a reasonable conversation do you find it acceptable to spend Canadian tax dollars on abortions, on foreign abortions? Because I think that that's an even more polarizing topic. Never mind just for Canadian people. We get to export our values of abortions being okay to other countries, using our money, which has been classified as speech, Canadian taxpayer money, to spread that message worldwide. Is that what we want? That's incredible. That's incredible. And not only that, the amount being spent per year is incredible. We're going to get to that in a comparison to my own town. And I think it's a I think it's absolutely shameful. Shameful. Back to the article. Canada will increase funding for women's health services worldwide from the current $1.1 billion to $1.4 billion by 2023. The increase includes raising to $700 million from $400 million. That's a difference of $300 million, everyone. The amount dedicated to sexual and reproductive health. Trudeau made the announcement at a major global conference on gender equality in Vancouver, saying Canada is stepping up with money where other countries have retreated. Quote, while other countries are stepping back on their investments and playing politics with it, Canada is stepping up, he said. In March, U.S. President Trump expanded his government's ban on funding for any organizations that perform abortion services, referrals, or advocacy related to abortion, a policy known as the Global Gag Rule that his predecessor Barack Obama repealed. Since then, Trump has twice expanded the policy, most recently to include non-governmental organizations that fund or support other groups that provide or discuss abortion. Trudeau said he would, quote, always be unequivocal about defending a woman's right to choose. The funding is part of Canada's commitment to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, a United Nations-led 15-year global framework. Right. And I was saying that increasing the spending by $300 million a year seems egregious, seems like a lot of money to spend on foreign women's health. And here's a local paper from my local riding, and it's the Guelph Mercury, and it says there is hope in addressing homelessness in Guelph. And this talks about the need for more money and the patchwork that the city's done to help the people in our city, and the fact that it ends at the end of the year and there's no more kind of certainty after that. And Lloyd Longfield, our MP, said at a funding announcement, and here's the article, it says, quote, at a funding announcement in late April, Guelph MP Lloyd Longfield said the federal government will provide the county with $1.48 million to address homelessness. The money, to be distributed over 5 years, is a boost over previous federal support, but it also won't be used to create new housing. Yeah, not going to fix the problem. Not even really going to pay for the patchwork of help that we've got kind of listed here. But you know what they've got? $300 million of our taxpayer dollars to increase for women's reproductive health in foreign countries. That's what they've got. Absolutely shameful. Shameful. Ridiculous. Two more stories to finish off the morning, and one of them is Laurie Goldstein, and I'm just going to, or Steen, sorry, Laurie, if I've got that wrong. I'm just going to read through the thread because I think it's right, and we're going to then look at the Justice Committee going all Ministry of Truth on us. Here we go. Laurie Goldstein, Steen, tweeting, quote, what's wrong with these people? They're literally starting to resemble the inner party in Orwell's 1984. Liberals and NDP members of Commons Justice Committee vote to scrub Conservative MPs' hurtful remarks to Muslim witness from official record. It never happened, guys. Back to this. Then they decided not to televise the committee appearance of free speech advocates Mark Stein, John Robson, and Lindsay Shepherd on Tuesday, and only record the audio. Almost as appalling is that because Andrew Scheer removed Tory MP Michael Cooper from the committee for defending Conservatives from the allegation that what they write leads to terrorist attacks on Muslims, the Conservatives are hamstrung in opposition on this nonsense. So the Conservatives abstained on the vote in favor of expunging the official record of Parliament. This is all literally evocative of Orwell's memory hole in 1984, the mechanism by which the party retroactively expunged documents, photographs, transcripts, or other records necessary to preserve the party's control and the manipulation of the past, as well as the present and the future. Unbelievable, actually shocking, but not surprising given the party currently in power in Ottawa, and a chilling indication nothing will ever change no matter who wins the October 21st election. I disagree on that one, Laurie. I think if Mr. Bernier wins, things will change. I hope he does. Here we go. Here's the CBC article for the same thing, and we'll read it because it's important. Justice Committee votes to scrub Conservative MP's hurtful remarks to Muslim witness from official record. Now, if you watch my show, you heard the remarks. The remarks were nothing more than the Christchurch shooter saying that he aligned himself more with communist China than with capitalism, because capitalism and conservatism is corporatism under a different name. And that was used to disprove Mr. Surrey's remarks, and I did an extended long video on that, et cetera, et cetera. And no matter what you think about what the remarks were, they happened, and that matters. Here's the article. Okay. The House of Commons Justice Committee in Ottawa has voted to strike controversial remarks from Conservative MP Michael Cooper from the record. Liberal MP Randy Boissonnault put forward the motion on Tuesday morning, calling Cooper's comments discriminatory, hurtful, and disrespectful. They were not. Over the weekend, Conservative leader Andrew Scheer removed Cooper from the Justice Committee, and after the Alberta MP confronted a Muslim witness in a hearing studying online hate. Cooper had told Faisal Khan Suri that he should, quote, be ashamed after he drew a link between Conservative commentators and the online history of mosque shooter Alexander Bissonnette. Cooper also quoted from the manifesto of the man accused of the mass killings in Christchurch, New Zealand, in an attempt to discredit Suri's testimony. Now, I'll note here as well, the last time the CBC reported this, they put the name in. Now they didn't put the name in. Interesting. The committee voted 6-0 to remove the name of the attacker and a section of his manifesto that Cooper had read at committee. Conservative committee members abstained from voting. NDP Randall Garrison said we are living in incendiary times and warned people must not confuse free speech and the exchange of ideas with throwing gas on the fires. Quote, I think we have a responsibility as a committee of parliament to make sure we do not contribute to that and that we respect the wishes of the New Zealand government in trying to make sure that those who engage in violent acts based on extremist ideologies do not get a public forum to spread their ideas, he said. Conservative MP John Brassard said Scheer had already dealt with the matter and Cooper had apologized. Quote, this is nothing more than a stunt, Brassard said. According to information provided by the Liberal Library of Parliament, evidence expunged from the record in committee is across all mediums, written, audio, and visual. This power has historically been used rarely and most commonly for the protection of witness privacy, according to the library. Tuesday's meeting, which heard from free speech advocate Mark Stein, John Robson, and Lindsay Shepherd, was initially to be televised, but MPs voted to have it recorded for audio only. Robson, a commenter and columnist for the National Post, warned that censorship only drives hate speech underground, giving it a hiding place where it goes unchallenged. We want to rescue the haters as well as protect society from hate, he said. If you keep it off the open internet, it goes into the dark web, where it festers and it breeds in dank basements. It even lets haters wrap themselves in the mantles of martyrdom. Stein, a free speech commentator who acknowledged his past commentary has been obnoxious and hurtful, said politicians must resist calls to reinstate Section 13 pertaining to hate speech in the Canadian Human Rights Act, which was repealed in 2013. The idea of bureaucrats once again getting into this business is deeply disturbing, he said. Garrison, who spoke about receiving explicit death threats because he is openly gay, he's an openly gay MP, expressed concern with Tuesday's testimony. I must confess, I find this panel extremely challenging because I happen to live in the real world and I happen to live in this century, he said. Several historians, meanwhile, criticized committee's decision to purge the official record. James Muir, sorry if I got that wrong, a legal historian at the University of Alberta, said it undermines the goal of holding MPs guilty of egregious conduct to account. I think the action here is wrong-headed, he said. What MP Cooper said has been widely reported outside of the official record, so the information won't be lost. It will simply be located elsewhere. Effectively removing it from the record lets Mr. Cooper hide his egregious conduct. Michael Behiles, doesn't matter. A political historian at the University of Ottawa said the committee's action undermines the integrity of Parliament. I agree with that. Researchers will get access to the material expunged from the record via other sources, starting with the media sources, he told CBC News. If there's incitement to violence in the document or documents being read into the record of the committee, then the chair of the committee must add a full explanation as to how and why the incitement of violence part of a document got read into or was placed in the record. Historians would then be able to fully understand the incident. And yeah, like expunging this doesn't mean it didn't happen. And he didn't say anything insightful or hateful or incendiary at all. What he said was the Christchurch killer aligns with communist China and doesn't agree with capitalism, and I already said this, or corporatism or conservatism, because it aligns itself with corporatism. And I'm paraphrasing terribly, and I know that, so I apologize. Go read the manifesto yourself. And it's not illegal in Canada, and the fact that we're respecting New Zealand's insane attempt to silence people. The only way to get to solve a problem and to get to the bottom of something is to shine sunlight on it and really examine it. Not say, don't ever look there. Nothing needs to be looked at over there. Don't look there and just listen to us. Listen to what we're telling you. White supremacy is the worst and the biggest problem in Canada right now. Absolute trash, absolute garbage. And the only way to have an honest conversation is to be able to talk about everything fully instead of, this ridiculous pearl clutching at the federal level. This is childish. This is ridiculous. And I'm ashamed of our government currently. It is terrible. Terrible. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out the peoplespartyofcanada.ca and have a wonderful, wonderful day.